Nintendo. It's one of the biggest gaming companies in the world, with smash hit titles like Super Mario and Zelda. Nintendo is a big part of the gaming community, but did you know that Nintendo is 132 years old? That's right, this is the history of Nintendo. Nintendo was founded in 1989, where it was originally called Yamauchi Nintendo, after its founder, Fusajiro Yamauchi. The company was based in Kyoto, Japan, where the Nintendo HQ was just a small building, nothing like what it is today. Yamauchi started out the company by making playing cards called Hanafuda. These cards were a success for Yamauchi, and after a while he realized that he couldn't keep making this a one-man show and hired some assistants. In 1959, Nintendo struck a deal with Disney where Disney allowed the rights to Nintendo to produce playing cards with Disney characters on them. This deal was a great success, and Nintendo sold 600,000 card packs in a single year. After this success, Yamauchi knew Nintendo needed to go mainstream and brought his company to the public in 1962, and in 1993 he changed the name to what it is today, Nintendo. After this change, Nintendo went into its experimental phase, where they set up a taxi company, a love hotel chain, and a food company selling instant rice, and other weird things like vacuum cleaners. And as you could have guessed, all these products failed, but one thing didn't: toys. The playing card industry was dying, which wasn't good for Nintendo, making the company's stock plummet from 900 yen to 60 yen. This led Nintendo to make a change, and that change was toys. With that being the only experiment that was a bit successful, but it wasn't easy, with prominent toy companies like Bandai and Tommy already dominating the toy world at the time. In 1966, Yamauchi visited one of the company's Hanafuda factories and noticed an extending arm, which was made by one of the maintenance engineers, Gunpei Yokoi, who made it for his own amusement. This sparked an idea in Yamauchi's head and ordered Yokoi to develop an extending arm as an official product for the Christmas rush. The product was released and sold as the Ultra Hand and was one of Nintendo's earliest blockbuster toys, selling over 1 million units. Yamauchi saw that Yokoi had promise and pulled him off the assembly line to work in product development. Yokoi was very talented with his engineering background, and soon enough Yokoi was developing electronic toys which Nintendo could sell at a much higher price. Yokoi would go on to develop more products like the 10 Billionaire Barrel Puzzle, a baseball throwing machine called the Ultra Machine, and a love tester. Then in 1970, Nintendo released the first solar-powered light gun called the Nintendo Beam Gun in partnership with Sharp. This was the first commercially available light gun for home use and Nintendo's entrance to the gaming industry. In 1972 was the year Nintendo started to get into the video game market by helping produce optoelectronic guns for the Magnavox Odyssey.
It's available only from the Magnavox salesman in the store. Odyssey, the electronic game of the future that lets you do your own thing on television, and only from Magnavox.
This was the first commercially available video game console. After their successful partnership, in 1974 Nintendo got the rights to distribute the Magnavox in Japan. During this time, Nintendo saw how successful video games were and began to test the waters. Sometime during the 1970s, Nintendo agreed to joint development with Mitsubishi Electric to make the Color Game TV machine. They released Color TV Game 6 and Color TV Game 15. The number just indicated the number of games the consoles had. After this, they would release their first arcade machine with EVR Race in 1975. And other arcade machines would follow, with Donkey Kong being their most popular. The 80s was the rise of Nintendo creating some of their most popular games, which were later ported to the Atari 2600 and the ColecoVision. Then, in 1980, Nintendo released the Game & Watch, the first handheld game produced by Nintendo. The Game & Watch was a small handheld console with each one having a different game, like ball. You threw the ball up, and you caught it. Simple, but revolutionary at the time. In 1982, Nintendo started to make prototypes of what would soon be their first home console. Then, officially in 1983, it was released in Japan under the name Famicom, and it wasn't a great release. In the first 2 months, Nintendo sold 500,000 units for around $100, which was good, but a few months later, complaints started coming in about the console freezing when players put certain games in. This led to Nintendo having to recall all Famicom consoles that were in store, and they lost $500,000. But this didn't hold them back. In 1985, Nintendo would re-release the Famicom worldwide under a new name, the Nintendo Entertainment System, or the NES.
Nintendo Entertainment System. Comes with Rob, Zapper, Control Deck, 2 controllers, Gyromite, and Duck Hunt.
Later, in 1986, Super Mario Bros. Was released in Japan and was a huge success and would eventually be released worldwide in 1987. Nintendo would go on to release more consoles, with their most recent being the Nintendo Switch. And the rest is history. Nintendo has stood the test of time and has brought so many people together, whether that just be friends and family or meeting a whole new group of people at tournaments or events. With its ever-growing popularity and amazing game titles, Nintendo will probably be here for another 100 years and more. And that was the history of Nintendo.